Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who Gianni Infantino says will not be playing in the next World Cup. And not just because he's American. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
First of all, shots fired. I heard that. Second of all...
I'm getting ready for the England-USA game next week.
Oh, I see what's happening here. Second of all, given what we know about Gianni Infantino and how he kind of takes personal slights very seriously and will punish people accordingly, I feel like we did do a whole show about that. So maybe he would actually say Taylor Rockwell is no longer allowed to play for the U.S. national team. And that's that dream ruined. So thanks, Gianni.
So if you haven't heard the news, listeners, this is the news that Gianni Infantino, in a sort of roundtable interview, I think with a bunch of journalists, said in response to the Der Spiegel stories about the possible European breakaway Super League, he basically said, any players playing in that league would be sort of not playing in a FIFA-sanctioned league and would not be allowed to play at the World Cup or in any big international football tournaments.
Yeah, and then I can't remember if it was...
Strong stance from Mr. sort of financial fair play is not real.
Yeah, it did, it does weaken the strong stance a little bit when you're out there, banging on the desk saying absolutely not, and then someone asks you about some of the allegations and your response is well, no comment. It's oh, okay, so you went from very angry to no comment real fast.
Do we think that this is part of it? He got sort of taken down in the big Der Spiegel story about how he has done I would say a good job of weakening the FIFA Ethics Committee, but obviously that's portrayed as a bad thing, and a bad job of enforcing financial fair play on PSG and Man City. So is this him trying to look tough?
Bear with me, because this might be a bit meandering.
Taylor, I've been bearing with you since 2009. I'm not going to stop now.
This is very true. Yeah, but in 2009, it was diluted a little bit. There were other people in there. It's been full Taylor for a while. I would say that I think he would definitely never acknowledge that, because I do think of the modern way to deal with a scandal is to just ignore it and it's not real, and then you focus on the aspects of it that you want to focus on. But I think if you really pressed it,
I don't know who you're referring to.
I know, right? Yeah, fun times we live in. But I do think, yes, that's probably what this is. It is trying to look very strong and very determined in your leadership. And it is also the case that it is a little bit of a crisis, because he has the UEFA role previously. And I think if he doesn't come out and take that strong stance, people start asking some questions. Maybe people look at his leadership a little bit and ask further questions. We know he doesn't want that to happen.
And honestly, if this breakaway Super League obviously weakens UEFA, the governing body, any weakening of any football governing body, that also reflects on FIFA, the governing body, right? So he obviously has a very heavily vested interest in this. I would also argue, I think he did mention this in the quote, that he's also thinking his FIFA Club World Cup idea, where, do you remember the thing where he wanted to accept a massive billions of dollars bid from some basically unnamed oil money for the rights to form this expanded Club World Cup. So I think he's also pushing that as a potential alternative to the European Super League by saying to Real Madrid et al., hey, but you could make loads of money in this tournament.
Yeah. I would agree with that completely. I would also extend that further to authority likes authority. And it's why, you look at
It's why Mussolini and Hitler were friends?
Kind of. Or it's why one would come to the other's aid. It's the domino theory. It's why the United States wanted to support regimes because they didn't want them to fall to communism. Do we really worry about communism in Southeast Asia? No, but we're worried it's going to spread and spread and spread. And I think you could probably extend that analogy here, strangely enough, which is that if there's this breakaway European Super League, well, what stops some federations from being you know what? I don't really want to give FIFA my money. Let's start our own World Cup. Yeah. And and I think if you're in a position of authority and you see cracks in other areas that could then lead to your organization crumbling, you do what you can to snuff those out immediately or paper them over or whatever you want to go with there.
Oh, Der Spiegel. You've really mixed it up, Der Spiegel, which, by the way, means the mirror, as I've said all along. I definitely didn't say it meant the eye.
People will forget if you stop referencing it, but you did it last night too.
See, I'm not good at beating down a scandal.
See, I know.
Or sidestepping.
Ignore it, baby. Just keep it going. Keep it going. How dare you make these accusations that I've said things that I've definitely said on record and have recorded? I didn't say that.
Well, the thing is, if I denied it, Der Spiegel would then publish an investigation into how I definitely said it.
Yeah, and knowing Der Spiegel, they would probably find some
podcast leaks.
Yeah, they would find the leaked rough recording when we talk about how should we acknowledge that you said it? No, we definitely shouldn't. Well, I never even said it in the first place.
There were definitely microphones in the room.
There you go.
So speaking of moving on.
There are microphones everywhere.
We have 4 listener questions today, but we also have a bit of Champions League action to talk about.
Yeah, we do.
Sort of, because it was Manchester United away. So it was Juventus versus Manchester United in the Champions League today. It's the one game that we both managed to sit down and watch. Spoiler alert, get ready. It finished 2-1 to Manchester United, and everybody looked shell-shocked afterwards.
Yep, pretty much.
It was like the 1999 Champions League final with the 2 late goals and the win, but with none of the excitement.
Yes,
or
that
fun.
Is incredibly accurate and well described. Should we move on?
I mean, I'm willing to.
I will say this: we only have one TV in my house, which is where I watch the game, and
that is a good number of TVs, by the way.
I think so.
That's how many I have.
And we put it upstairs in the bedroom, where the bed is, obviously. So when you say sit
not
down,
so keen on that move, but okay.
See, here's the problem: because then, you're in a reclined position. I'm very comfortable. Manchester United away. Not the most exciting game. I legitimately
used to be Mourinho away.
I set countdown timers every 10 minutes because I just program being asleep at a certain point, and it worked to my advantage because I was awake for most of this game.
So yes, Mourinho away definitely goes to Juventus and says, all right, we've got a defensive plan. We're going to come away with probably a draw. Maybe we snatch a win on a free kick, 1-0, something like that. And you've got to say, up until that incredible Cristiano Ronaldo goal, which we'll get into, the plan kind of worked, right? Man United were essentially 4-1-4-1, more or less. You could call it a 4-3-3, but it wasn't.
No.
And invited Juventus onto them, but bit of goal-mouth scramble, couple of De Gea saves. They basically weathered it until that magic moment.
Yes, I would agree with that, because if you look at some of the shots, which we went back and watched, like the extended highlights, and most of those shots from Juve, especially in the first half, even the ones that look dangerous, are still under pressure or outside the box or deflections, and it still
always
isn't
bodies between the ball and the goal.
It's not the like pass, and suddenly you've got a wide open shot from 8 yards out. I think the only time that did happen was for Semi Khedira in the first half. He ends up scuffing it wide, and I would make the argument that because it happened so rarely, when it did actually happen, I think he was kind of surprised to be in that position.
The big thing I would say is evidence of Mourinho and Manchester United's approach is I saw a lot of times when Man United had an opportunity to counter-attack, Martial, who's on the left, and Lingard on the right, still wouldn't fully go, right? And Pogba and Herrera, the two central midfielders with Matic behind them, wouldn't really go. Like Alexis Sanchez was still the guy in Juve's box. Nobody else really wanted to join him. I think they'd basically been told, don't get stretched out, don't get counter-attacked upon.
Yes, exactly. I was working on an extended analogy again about warfare from World War II. We're like, don't get stretched out. You extend your supply lines. It's what Napoleon did. Maybe we can go that deep. But you don't want to get overexposed.
You've been listening to hardcore history.
Not recently enough for that to be an excuse for me referencing 3 different military struggles now. But
can I give a shout out to Aaron Dolores of Black Arrow FC?
Sure.
He sort of pointed me towards hardcore history. And
oh, really?
Yeah, whenever I'm short of a podcast now, I'm like, there's this 3-hour podcast of one man talking on his own, and somehow it's brilliant.
It is.
Yeah? How does he do it?
If he does the multiple ones like the World War I, you can probably skip the first 15 minutes of it because he tends to do a lot of recapping to get back into it.
Okay.
That is the downside of one person giving you a narrative, but it's very good. I do enjoy hardcore history. The other thing...
Nearly as good as Goalmouth. In terms of one match.
Nearly. There we go. I also enjoy your point, which is true, that I think if you're very focused on staying defensively solid, if you try to counterattack and you have 2 players played out of position, it's the whole principle of gegenpress. When you're counterattacking that leaves you vulnerable because you've got people where they're not supposed to be. And so I think you're absolutely right that United were very focused on keeping people in exactly the right shape, and that doesn't really lend itself to a lot of attacking fluidity.
And here's the thing. I think you and I disagree on this a little bit, right?
A little bit.
I think that when you have that approach, eventually you get in too defensive of a mindset. You don't put enough pressure on the ball. And I think that Ronaldo goal comes from Leonardo Bonucci, having way too much time on the ball. Because I know he's a centre-back, but he is very much over the halfway line, right? And he's able, with no pressure on him at all, to look up, see Ronaldo's run, and chip it over the Manchester United defence.
Right.
I think a more proactive team would have closed him down.
See, I don't disagree with you, but then this is the confusing aspect, and I would fully admit this might be my Man United fandom coming to the forefront, but then you're talking about a different team. You're talking about a completely different tactic.
Yeah.
So you're not saying that they should modify it. You're saying that this is the downside to this approach.
If it was up to me as a soccer viewer, no team would ever do what Manchester United did because I want every game to be a bit more open.
Yeah, but I guess that kind of is my point, though, that to criticize, or not even criticize, but just to say but see, this is what happens if you don't go step to that person, but that's never going to be in the system. So then you basically are asking them to play a different system.
Yes,
because then you're saying go step and pressure.
I write a letter every week.
Right. And so I think I only make that distinction because I
send it to Jose's hotel room.
Yeah, that'll work. I think he has a house. I'm not sure. But I think if you ask Jose Mourinho that, I feel like the majority of the time he would say, like, yeah, we're okay with that. We're okay with that long ball over the top. We want that to be what they do because, if anything, that speaks to they haven't found a way through. The crossing hasn't worked. The shooting from distance hasn't worked. So now they're just trying to lump long balls. The difference being it's Cristiano Ronaldo.
I mean, I wouldn't call it a long ball because it's Leonardo Bonucci.
It's a direct over ball.
Yeah, actually
that's what we've dubbed it.
It actually is a direct over, right? I think Bonucci has a well-known, wonderful eye and accuracy for a pass.
A Dover ball.
But even then, it still takes something special from Cristiano Ronaldo to finish. And I actually think when we rewatch to see how this managed to happen, a lot of it is about what Cristiano Ronaldo does with his run, right? Because I was all ready to blame Victor Lindelof, who's with him, and now I don't think it's Lindelof's fault, except for being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, and I think
to quote Dumb and Dumber.
This is yes. This is definitely my fandom because I really enjoyed so much of what Lindelof did and have been enjoying it recently that I think I am loath to put this on him so much. But
he
watching
did a lot of blocking. When Juve had that sort of pressure, but United had numbers behind the ball, it was often Lindelof who somewhat, like, it looks semi-clumsy sometimes, but he was always in the way and the ball would hit him, which is basically what you're there to do.
Yeah, and so in this sequence...
Like a big Lucas Torreira.
Yeah, perfect. There we go. Like a big Lucas Torreira. But in this sequence, it is him tracking that run of Ronaldo, I think, and recognizing that there's about to be a long ball played over top. So I don't want to say like it's him like keeping Ronaldo on side because it's basically him making that run back to make sure he's covering. But I think to your point, it is Ronaldo recognizing, Lindelof's already starting to drop back. But if I charge onto this the way maybe some strikers would, I'm going to be a yard or two offside.
Yeah.
And so he slows it down just a little bit.
Yeah, he runs, then he stutters a little bit, and then he goes, and so he manages to be onside and then goal side of Bonucci. And then even when the ball does drop in front of him, it's still a tough chance.
Oh,
right?
It is. But I wanted to say really quickly, though, that if you go back and watch, I believe I'm correct in saying that as that ball is about to be delivered, Ronaldo starts to go and I think looks to his left and recognizes there is nobody else to my left, so it's Lindelof is the deepest defender, and I think that's why that stutter step happens. So
you gave Smalling some side eye.
Yeah, it's like a microsecond awareness to spot, okay, I can't go running, I'll stutter and then I'll go.
Yeah.
And then, it's very good technique because I don't think it's about like outwitting David De Gea. I think it's just about if I put this on frame, it's going to be really difficult to say.
That's interesting because I thought that the outwitting part is most players are going to hit that to the what do we call this? Towards the far post.
Yeah,
basically because there's more goal to aim at there, and that's the best you can do in the very limited space that you've got. And yet Ronaldo hits it inside the near post, which I think is a really tough. It's a tough angle to make. I know I make this analogy a lot, but it's like the Star Wars shooting one Pratt or hitting the Death Star. What is it? It's the
exhaust port?
Yes, it's like hitting the exhaust port. It's a very narrow little angle that he hits it down. But you think he just like hit it, basically?
Well, first of all, I think Stewie Griffin was right in the Family Guy Star Wars. Just put a piece of plywood over that thing. It's not a problem. Second of all, I mean, I don't know. Cristiano Ronaldo is a slightly better soccer player than I.
That was made before Rogue One, though.
This is true. This is true. You're right. I forgot about that. Way to cover up a plot hole with an entire movie.
Ruined Family Guy.
Also that.
Do you think Seth MacFarlane was mad watching Rogue One? Like, no, you've ruined my special.
Probably. And I feel like there's probably a joke somewhere in one of the later seasons of Family Guy that I haven't watched. But I think Ronaldo being a better player, maybe he's able to read that entire thing. But I think just the amount of technique and awareness it takes to track that ball over the shoulder, then hit it in stride at full speed, I feel like he was just trying to put it on frame and just hoping it went somewhere on frame, and that it went where it did, worked out. Maybe it's the case that he's just that good that he can also then calculate where De Gea is in relation to the goal, where this ball needs to go. Either way, it ends up at the back of the net.
It certainly does. All right, so I think that's the last we'll say about Ronaldo, except to remind people that there is a Der Spiegel story with rape allegations against Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yep.
And I believe, is it Las Vegas police or Nevada police, have reopened the case. That I haven't read any further. I don't know if that's still been reopened. But that is an ongoing investigation as far as I'm aware.
I may or may not, but definitely did research this as well. I believe as of October 5th, the case was Las Vegas police were investigating it. I'm not sure if they had reopened the case, but I think they were looking into reopening the case, I believe, because reopening the case would imply that there's other information there that maybe we don't know for sure yet.
And if people aren't aware, Der Spiegel, when they published the story, I mean, they had documentation, right, of the non-disclosure agreement with his accuser. Yep. So there's a paper trail here.
Oh, yeah.
Back to the soccer?
Yeah, other than to say that there's another Der Spiegel story coming out that we've talked about previously that says that a world star failed multiple drugs tests.
A multiple Champions League winner tested positive for steroids.
And I'm just going to say, not saying it's Ronaldo, but I'm just going to say maybe if you're accused of doping and doing steroids, don't show off your, like 0% body fat body. That's all I'm saying.
We don't know it's Ronaldo.
We don't.
On that one. Okay, so we're talking as if Juventus won the game.
We are.
They did not.
They did not.
Somehow, in the last 5 minutes, Manchester United scored 2 goals from set pieces.
Somehow is the correct way to explain that.
So Jose Mourinho had the genius idea that when his defensive shut-up-shop game plan doesn't work, throw on Marouane Fellaini.
Yep.
Go on, Marouane.
Yep.
Up you go.
Do things. Up you go. But before he's involved, because he's not really involved in the first goal, it's a foul on Pogba, free kick for United. And I think the key thing here, and the way they celebrate, I think you guessed that maybe the person that Juan Mata sprints to on the bench is the person responsible for drawing up set pieces.
I would guess. I didn't recognize him.
Because Ashley Young is the person who looks most likely to take this from about like 22 yards out, I'd say. He runs over it with his right foot, his dominant right foot, doesn't take it. Juan Mata takes it with his left, not his usual foot, buries that one, and I think it's that sequence that completely throws off Wojciech Szczesny.
Yeah, so Szczesny jumps to his left, and then by the time Mata is hitting it in the top left corner, Szczesny's right. It's just too far for Szczesny to get back and reach. Right?
Yeah. It's that certainly, but I think it's also that he does you'll watch goalkeepers when they get set to dive, they get their feet set and then they push off with the foot they need to so that they can get the full extension. And I think he does that little jump to get his feet set. And then the free kick doesn't come because it's not Ashley Young. So then he has to kind of scramble and get his footing back. And if you watch, he never really does. He ends up jumping or planting and pushing off with the wrong foot. So that's why he doesn't get that full lift that he might have otherwise have gotten.
Is it weird as well? I think of Juan Mata as a right-footed player.
Yeah.
Am I wrong there? Is he sort of a two-footed player?
I mean, certainly he's two-footed given that he hit that free kick. But no, I think you're correct to think of him as predominantly right-footed.
Maybe the next FIFA, his weak foot rating will go up a bit.
That could be. Maybe they're going to update those stats. Ashley Young's right-footedness will remain intact, though, and he is the one who plays that ball in for the winner.
Yes, he is. So it is Barzali who has come off the bench for De Cilia and played right back, who I believe fouls Rashford, who has come off the bench for Man United. And then towards the end of the game, Juve are facing this free kick. It ends up being an own goal for Alex Sandro, which is really harsh on him. But yeah, I think the key to this goal is the fact, I mentioned this with the England World Cup preview, Ashley Young takes a mean in-swinging direct free kick.
And why is that problematic?
It's problematic because normally the ball floats in and then floats away. And what most players are trying to do is maybe tempt the goalkeeper to come, but then it goes away. But when you whip in an in-swinging free kick, it's kind of going towards goal, right? Yep. So it just causes this element of panic in everybody where you don't know if it's sort of a shot, it's sort of a cross. Everybody's backpedaling all the time because the ball keeps coming deeper and deeper and deeper. I think you see all those things play out in this goal. It's where you end up with 2 Juve players facing their own goal. It hit Bonucci and then Sandro on the way in.
And the post too, I think, too.
Because they're all scrambling backwards.
Yeah. And it's worth noting here that, again, I'm applying our amateur soccer to this one, so big old grain of salt. But if you haven't played or you're new to it, it is really weird that a big part of defending, I think, is patterns of play and regularity. And if you're used to that outswinging cross lofted in, you know how to backpedal so you don't leave too early and keep the whole line on side. You know how to backpedal but then move to meet that ball in the air. Yeah. That in-swinger, at the velocity it's coming in, it does just throw you a little bit. Yeah. And if you're a defender backpedaling, waiting for the loft, it makes it harder to react. I also think it's the case that it's a very designed set piece in that Chris Smalling peels out and makes a run around the whole line of players, and it's when he gets to full speed and is starting to turn on goal, that's when Ashley Young runs up and hits that ball. And I think he's waiting for Smalling to get right at full speed so that by the time he hits it, Smalling can be 100% going in on goal, and it causes further problems.
And it's meant to be a Marouane Fellaini flick on, right?
I think so,
but I'm pretty sure what happens is this ball just brushes through Fellaini's hair, which is, again, very confusing if you're a Juventus defender, because now you're trying to track if that ball's going to go, if it's going to change the trajectory, and it basically doesn't.
Or even because it's Fellaini, if you're Szczesny in goal, you might think, he's going to get ahead to this, so I'm going to stay planted to the ground so I can react to that header. And then when it gets flicked onto the back post,
it could be a shot with the head.
Then you're scrambling again. Exactly. So if you're the whole defense, you're getting set for Fellaini to try to win that header, put it on frame. Instead, maybe his hair just knows better and lets it go through. Then everybody's scrambling, and it ends up being, I'm assuming, an own goal.
So this is, to me, is a case of essentially Mourinho was proved right in a way because his defensive game plan held Juve to 1 goal, and then his
smash and grab,
his panicky attacking game plan, which is get Fellaini on there, get some free kicks and stuff, essentially got Man United 2 goals.
And it could have been worse because Marcus Rashford misses a 1v1 situation. If he finishes that, it's 3-1 United, and that is a completely ridiculous scoreline.
So Mourinho is proved right. But we still have to set alarms when we watch Manchester United away.
Yep, 100%.
Yes,
that's how it works.
Yeah.
Or just drink more coffee and don't lay down in bed with my dogs.
There we go.
And if anyone else is doing that, why are you in my house?
What was the? I think you looked into this. What was the Mourinho holding 3 fingers up to the Juventus fans thing?
It was in regard to, I believe, when he was with Inter Milan winning the treble. So I think he had been, he said after the match he was getting booed throughout. There were comments about his family and his wife, and he took issue with that. So once the final whistle went and maybe there was less crowd volume than there had been when Juve were winning 1-0, he cupped fingers to the ear, then he held up 3 fingers. Bonucci, I believe it was, took issue with that one. A little bit of a drama there at the end of the game. But I have to say, this is a Barry Glendenning argument from Football Weekly. It is interesting to me when football fans will yell at a coach for the entire game or yell at a player and boo and harass, and then when that player reacts, it's the pearl clutching of how could he react? It's like, it works both ways, man. It works both ways.
Okay, before we move on to our 4 listener questions, this is a packed show. Today's show is sponsored by a returning sponsor.
Who is it, Daryl Grove?
It is Grip 6 belts. Tighten up, Taylor. That's not Grip 6's tagline, but I feel like it should be.
It should be. Maybe drop the Taylor part so it doesn't feel quite so personal.
It's got alliteration in it.
I just think I've already been attacked by Gianni Infantino today. I don't need Grip 6 coming after me as well.
It's a rough day.
Yeah.
It's a rough day.
I'm wearing my Grip 6 belt right now.
Are you really?
I am. I often am. In fact, if I'm wearing a belt, I'm wearing a Grip 6 nowadays.
Yes.
That's the way it's gone.
And we're not saying that because they pay us. They're not really paying us to say that. They're just paying us for the ad, right? They did send us sample belts, and genuinely, these belts are different. They are thinner, more lightweight, and more secure than any other belt out there.
It has kind of ruined belt buckles a little bit for me because
they seem pointless now.
Well, that, but also when you sit down, that's the biggest difference for me. Is like the sitting down, the belt buckle kind of, it digs in a little bit, or you can feel it if you've got a metal belt buckle. It stays cold, especially in the winter, and you sit down and it's like, ooh, there's the belt buckle there.
Even if you're a healthy weight, right? The belt buckle still gives you a little poke.
I would say so. A little poke, yes. Grip 6 does not do that, but it also has the binding teeth, so it doesn't, you don't have to readjust all the time. It stays nice and tight, keeps your pants up, and that's the goal with all belts. Yeah,
actually, other belts have a bit of I feel like give out throughout the day, whereas Grip 6 really is like...
I would agree with that.
Where you set it is where it stays. And if people are listening, they might be thinking, oh, these guys are just talking up. It's just a belt, guys. It's just a belt. If you take a look at the website, go to grip6.com/TSS, you will see this is not just a regular belt. They've basically redesigned how belts work.
Yeah.
That too strong a claim? No, they've redesigned the belt buckle.
The badger bite. Yeah.
The badger teeth.
Badger teeth, it's strong. It holds it in place. If you wrapped all of the biggest clubs in Europe together with a Grip 6 belt, they couldn't break away and form their own Super League. That's how strong it is.
Jose Mourinho would use it for away games.
This is also true. Both of those things are true.
So people in the past have listened to our Grip 6 ads. They've gone to the Grip 6 website and they've seen the 3-pack. But then the discount code didn't work on the 3-pack. We've had a word with Grip 6 and they have switched it up.
All right.
So if you go now to grip6.com/TSS, it's now a landing page instead of us just giving you the discount code. Go to grip6.com/TSS and you can get the 3-pack where it's 3 buckles and 3 different belts. You can get 33% off. We've been told that is the best deal they've ever
That is a large
offered.
percentage.
We're good negotiators.
There we go.
Turns out. Yeah. We would not have offered Seth Johnson that contract. 33% off the 3-pack if you go to grip6.com/TSS. And if you just want the 1 belt, it's still 20% off any individual belt. Grip6.com/TSS. The link will be in the show notes.
There we are. Thank you to Grip 6 for sponsoring today's episode. Thank you to 4 listeners for sending in 4 listener questions. Shall we get to them now, my friend?
Yeah. Would you like me to ask the first one, or would you like to ask the first?
I'll ask the first one. I'll give you a moment to breathe, since you, I think, just did all the promoing. Ira Jersey via his son Isaac. Hello, Isaac. When I hear people like you, Matt Doyle, etc., talk about a national team player pool, quote unquote, what does that mean? I would think that any citizen who is not cap-tied and registers with U.S. Soccer and therefore FIFA could be eligible. Is this wrong? And if so, what does player pool, quote unquote, actually mean?
So Ira sent a follow-up email where basically his son Isaac, who's also a soccer fan and player, had asked him what's the player pool, and I think Ira was kind of like, it's one of those questions where I know the answer, but I don't really know the answer. And that's why I love this question.
Yep.
I love this question. So first thing worth pointing out is the player pool is not an official thing.
No.
Right? So when we say it, or I like that I lumped us in with Matt Doyle. That's kind of a compliment, right? Mm-hmm. When we say the player pool, we just mean essentially the list of players that could conceivably play for the US men's national team. That's what I think of it as.
I think so. And I think, you're right.
If we say our player pool is short on left backs, I'm sure America is not short on left backs, right? I could go out tomorrow and find you 7 left backs right here in Richmond.
Yeah.
I'm not sure any of them would do a particularly good job at international level, so therefore they are not in the player pool.
There's some good ones, but probably not quite. And so I think in my mind it tends to be the players that any given national team manager has called in are in that player pool.
Yes.
But then there are the other players that are eligible, to Ira's point. Yeah, if you aren't cap-tied or if you can file a one-time switch, then I think you are still technically in that pool. It's just you're in a different location than maybe somebody else who's played every single game for the national team.
So what if you say you're in MLS and you're doing pretty well at left back and you're an American, but you've never played for a youth national team and you've never been called up for the US men's national team, but you are technically available and a professional footballer, so theoretically competent, would you say that player is in the player pool? Or is it only if Dave Sarachan is aware of you and considers you a worthy call-up, you're in the player pool?
I mean, first of all, the cop-out answer is we don't know, because we don't know how that works. Like, if U.S. Soccer is keeping tabs on everybody who's potentially eligible, it seems far-fetched to me. Maybe that's something that will change. I personally would not have that player in there, no. As weird as it sounds, like because I think for me there has to be an established familiarity for it to be in the pool. But again, this is a fairly made up abstract sort of term.
Yeah.
But I guess you could say they are, if they're eligible, then they're in there. Sure, why not?
I would also say, here's my actual answer to this question. Now I think about it, is that we say player pool because alliteration sounds nice.
Yeah,
and it's also a much shorter alliterative way of saying. The list of players that could be possibly called up.
Yeah.
Which has too many syllables and too many words.
Yeah.
Player pool is snappy and an easy way to say it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure there's some etymology that I will remember half an hour from now and be mad at myself for not remembering now.
I mean, pool is like an established word to mean like a group of things, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Carpool, etc.
Yeah, I just still don't know why that's the case. But yes, but I would say this. I do remember an iteration of, I think, FIFA many years ago. I'm assuming it has changed since then, but you could then still play as a national team, and you could go through like the full qualifying. And it did allow you to go in and look at every single player that they had in their database of the player pool, and you could swap out the players that were on the national team roster if there was somebody you liked more. And in my mind, that is where it came from, is like this idea that there's a database that U.S. Soccer's pulling from and swapping out.
But wait, on FIFA, did that like have any American player?
Yes. But, I mean, I think it had the ones that they had put in there to be eligible to be selected. So but again, that's a programmer having to go through and put in a bunch of names.
But that's probably not dissimilar to real life, right? So it's essentially, I've just thought of another way of referring to it is it's a long list.
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe it's a 23-man roster, but maybe there are 70 players that are potentially on the long list and could be called up.
Yeah, right? I think so. And then I think there's probably a shorter list just because of the way the human brain works. I think if you are, say, Dave Sarachan, maybe that's a bad example because he's interim and he's trying a bunch of different stuff. But if you're a more established national team manager, I feel like you've got your core group of like 30 that you're kind of always considering. And then maybe there's a player who can come into that one that knocks somebody out. That player then is still in the pool, but maybe not quite on that level of immediacy as other names.
So it's like an adult pool and a kiddie pool?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then the waiting list to get into the pool if you're Mac and D. Or Mac and Charlie, I think. Yeah. Because they're at capacity.
Ready for the next question?
Sure.
Okay, next question comes from Guy Yedwab. Oh, this is a good one. Guy wants to know, do formations have natural advantages against other formations? That's the short version. If, hypothetically, Guy asks, 2 mid-table Premier League teams were roughly equivalent squads and managers met with 2 different formations, are there some mismatches in formation that would create a huge advantage to one side? Mm-hmm. And which formations would tend to have the most advantages?
Yeah. All right. So I would say this. I think at the level that Guy has established, no. There's not one formation beats another, but then that one loses to this one.
Why so?
Because it's not, as we've said many times, it's not about where this player is. They're definitely in a 4-4-2. A lot of times formations are approximations of what they think the coach is going to be doing.
I think so too.
But it's much more about the tactics of where this player goes at any given moment and how if we have the ball, we stay wide. If we lose the ball, we get very compact. So then it's not a 4-4-2 versus a 4-3-3. You might think, oh, there's 3 more midfielders. That's going to be a problem. But if it's a 4-4-2 that as soon as they lose possession, all 4 of those midfielders come together within 20 yards of each other, now you've got 4 central midfielders.
Yes, I think that's a really good point. I think the very best illustration of this is the recent Clásico,
Yep.
where theoretically Barcelona and Real Madrid both played a 4-3-3, but Barcelona had 3 narrow forwards and Barcelona went wide forwards, and that worked out for Barcelona.
Yeah.
But technically, both playing a 4-3-3,
Yeah.
but the system is very different, right?
Yes.
So I think if you think of formations as just a list of numbers, I think you're right. The answer is no, that one is not better than the other.
I would agree. I would say then, I would agree with myself, which you disagree with. I would say that there are times when, and we've experienced this, of if you're playing a 4-2-3-1 and maybe trying to be a bit more defensive, and then the other team is playing a defensive shape as well, we've had those games where we sort of are like, oh, we should probably switch and have 3 attackers forward all the time. And so you can have those
games we've played in.
Yeah, maybe, but again, I think that comes down to approach, that if you're being defensive, it's not necessarily that the 4-2-3-1 versus a 4-5-1 or something like that.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
It's what you do with it that counts.
It is
what I always say.
I would say, though, that the 2 areas where I think maybe formations are more important are youth soccer and amateur soccer.
Ooh, okay.
Because I think a lot of times, there are times, especially in youth soccer, where coaches aren't necessarily watching what the other team is doing. They're focused on, are their players doing what they've been told? And so I think if you're in a 4-4-2 and the other team's in a 4-3-3, if you've told left midfielder stays wide, right midfielder stays wide, then yeah, if you're playing a very basic shape, you can have problems there.
You're basic.
Yeah, exactly. And same thing at adult level. And I think going back to what I was just talking about with that 4-2-3-1, if the other team is playing a system that really leaves that one striker isolated, if you change it up a little bit, then you can kind of exploit the very basicness or the very kind of rigidness of another team's shape. That's where I think it can be exploited.
That's interesting. Okay.
Because I think there's safety in, we're playing a 4-4-2. Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to conclude. If you say, we're playing a 4-4-2, everybody knows the rough shape of a 4-4-2.
That's why amateurs play 4-4-2, right?
Exactly.
Because it's easy to explain.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you can get in there and be like, okay, we're doing what we need to be doing. And again, you're not really adjusting to what the other team is doing. And if you're only coaching your half of the game, then you're running into problems. And that's where I think formation matters more.
My next point builds on this.
Yep.
I think the reason most amateur teams play 4-4-2, and the reason 4-4-2 was so popular for so long, is that it essentially is the most balanced formation, right? Because if you look at it on paper even, you're basically got every area of the field roughly covered, right? But then the downside of the 4-4-2 is you don't have any area of the field concentrated.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that is the thing with just basically with formations is the field is too big for 11 men to cover everything all the time. So different shapes essentially emphasize covering different things, right? So 4-3-3 gives you extra numbers in central midfield, but it gives up some of those wide areas, right? And if your wide guys go high, if your wide guys come deep, then you only have one striker. So you give up having 2 strikers, and it's always about a trade-off that you have to make. And there is no formation that solves every problem and manages to have dominance in one area without giving up another area.
Yeah, because one...
But then also when you put 2 of those things up against each other, someone can be dominant in one area, but that means you're going to be less dominant in another area. So that's why one formation isn't better than the other. It just means you're better in one area of the field, but they're better in one area of the field, so it's a wash.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah? And so I think if there were a game that were decided by one formation versus another, then that is a failure of coaching. Because it's a failure to adapt and adjust and kind of coach the players to play a different style or to adjust to what the other team is doing. If you're just, hey, those 2 midfielders, you guys got to stay central, that's the most important thing, then you're not really doing what you need to be doing to get that result.
I would also argue, I don't want to go too deep on this, but the reason so many people love the idea of a wing-back formation is because when you write it down, it looks like you've covered the whole field, right? But what you've actually done...
Daryl really wants the US to play a wing-back back 3 sort of situation.
So I'm not really against it, but I'm against the idea of people thinking, oh, this solves all our problems. Yeah. Because what you've done essentially is left your wing-backs with just one player out wide. Yeah, instead of normally in a 4-4-2, for example, there's a left back and left mid, a right back and a right mid. Yeah.
I was only going to instigate further, so I didn't really have anything else to add aside from because then if you do the back 3 with the 3-4-3 or whatever, then it's basically all DeAndre Yedlin on that right hand side. The entire right channel is his both to attack and defend. I'm not sure I really want that, and I'm not sure I really want that with a lot of players because it requires a very, very good understanding of exactly what's being asked and the technical ability to execute that game plan.
Also, soccer would be boring if one formation always beat another formation, because then just both teams would play that winning formation.
Exactly. And then, I mean, but it's worth noting.
By the way, Guy, this is a great question, though. I really enjoyed digging into this.
There's a chicken and egg aspect of this, too, where it's like, if there were one formation that always won, then everybody would play it. But if everybody played it, then there would be somebody like Pep Guardiola coming along to figure out how to beat that, or Jurgen Klopp figuring out how to beat that formation, then everybody would play that formation. And then it slowly cycles around, and that's kind of what we have.
And I get, so the final part on this is more important than formations are systems and style and the little details that go into it. Those are the things that decide soccer matches, not your basic shape.
Agreements.
Don't
be basic.
Don't be basic. Also, don't be basic in your food choices.
In your snack preferences?
In your snack preferences, because today's show is sponsored by RX Bar. Welcome back, RX Bar. RX Bar is a whole food protein bar.
It is indeed, and I'll say this about RX Bar. I needed something to eat in between coaching sessions today because I skipped breakfast like a dummy. And I went,
you dummy, don't skip breakfast.
I know, you never do.
It's the best one.
To be fair, if you skip breakfast, then the first meal you have is breakfast because you're breaking your fast. So any meal is breakfast if it's your first meal of the day. That said, I had not eaten and was very hungry. I went to the like a convenience store sort of place, and I just looked at all the snack options, and I really did think to myself, none of you are RX Bar, which is a big deal to me because everything in there was terrible.
I hope you said that to the inferior snack bars.
I did the angry squint is what I did. And the reason why that's a big deal to me is because there's lots of sugar dumped into everything, or you've got tons of carbs in there. It's not necessarily the best thing for you, and you've probably got a lot of chemicals too, RX Bar. None of that is the case.
Yep, it's real food ingredients that actually taste good. They even list the core ingredients on the front. So if you're new to RX Bar, you can really look at the front and be like, okay, that's what's in there.
Yeah, and it's egg whites, dates, and nuts. Not many of those things were included in the other snack options I was looking at today.
They also
Not
come
a lot
in
of dates in the 7-Eleven.
They also come in 14 delicious flavors. So you've got your starting 11 and 3 subs, just like in the old
There we go. And they are great, as we've already established, for breakfast on the go, for snacking at the office, if you're traveling, if you're riding your bike, as Daryl often is. It's a quick little snack that can give you that pick-me-up you need.
Chocolate and sea salt is my favorite.
Not by themselves, though. Not like you don't want a bag of chocolate and a bag of sea salt.
I want a bag of RX Bars, chocolate and sea salt flavour. Just hinting there, RX Bar. So if you want to get 25% off your first RX Bar order, go to rxbar.com/soccer. Link will be in the show notes. And enter promo code soccer at checkout. Worth noting, this is valid in the US only. In your face, Australians.
There we go. And also worth noting, in case we didn't already say it, RX Bars are gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, and Australia-free.
I actually love Australia. I regret starting this up.
I feel like Daryl always has vague negative comments to make about former British...
it's just people who beat us at cricket.
What would that be? Former British territories?
I mean, we're in one right now.
There you go.
Former British colonies.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
Or, if you prefer, proud members of the Commonwealth.
Of the 200-plus sovereign states in the world, how many of them do you think have an Independence Day against England?
Quite. I think it's us and Spain have some sort of terrible competition
I
going.
would say so.
Yeah.
So thank you to RX Bar for sponsoring today's episode of the Total Soccer Show. We do very much love X Bar. We do not love colonialism.
We do not. We do not. All right, more questions?
Yeah.
Okay, it's your turn to ask.
I believe it is. Short and easy question from Phil Kennedy. I have seen NFL players, such as defensive linemen who don't particularly need their hands to play, put a hard cast on and play with a broken arm. Why isn't this an option for Lionel Messi, who currently has a fractured arm?
Yes, he does, thanks to Real Madrid in the Clasico, right?
And that is a short and to the point question. So thank you for that, Phil.
So the reason he can't wear a hard cast to play is that, I want to say Law 4, because I looked this up earlier, the FIFA laws of the game, governing players' equipment, states that players can only wear equipment that doesn't endanger themselves or opponents. And if Lionel Messi went up for a header...
A key word in there is soft. Yeah. Basically, they can wear soft protective equipment.
There we go, yeah. So if Lionel Messi went up for a header with a hard cast on, and there's a danger that he's going to smack you in the face with a hard cast, that is dangerous, right? If he wore a soft cast and he's got a fractured arm, it's going to get possibly more fractured. So that's why you need a hard cast for a fractured arm. You can't wear a hard cast to play soccer because it's dangerous to your opponent.
Yes. I believe in years past, I've played on teams where you had a person who had a broken arm that they would not really wrap and bubble wrap, but if you wrapped it enough, then it became a soft cast, and I think that used to be permissible. I'm not sure it is anymore, but also if you're messing with a cast, you're trying to do a soft cast, it's also the case that if you're Lionel Messi, maybe just take that month off instead of potentially risking more damage that keeps you out even longer in a more serious way.
Yep, I think that's true, yeah. I do have a mental image of Eric Cantona in the 90s playing for Manchester United in what looked like a sort of cloth cast on his arm. I'm going to assume that that's some sort of like wrist injury or something that isn't as severe as a fractured arm.
Eric Cantona is allowed to do whatever he wants. That's also in Law 4. It's weirdly specific in there.
He's not allowed to wear a hard cast.
I mean, no, he specifically is. That's the only person who can. It says that in the laws of the game. In the way that it says you're not allowed to raise your studs. It definitely says that in there, too.
You're not allowed to kick Crystal Palace fans?
Yeah, that too. Good point.
I mean, anything else to add on this? I think basically there's no wiggle room, right? If you have something that's dangerous, there's no way you're playing.
I know. I think there maybe is wiggle room because it always comes down to a pre-match inspection from the officials.
Okay.
What I mean to say is I feel like that wiggle room is maybe something that you would investigate if you were an amateur player who wants to play. We played on a team with a guy who had an ankle monitor. I think that probably wouldn't be permissible under FIFA law.
That was interesting to me because I think if you get hit with that, it's kind of hard. But also, you definitely can't take an ankle monitor off.
Exactly.
Right?
So
And
I think,
do you know what? He did wrap it as well.
He did.
He wrapped it to make it as soft as possible, which is the best effort you can do to make that not a danger. So,
but I think also then two things there is
Very good player as
one,
well.
we had to get like permission from the league and we had to kind of inform the referee. The referee inspected it every time.
Yeah.
And what that means is that it's up to the whim of the official. And if the official in a Barca game looked at that cast and said like, no, there's a hard part here, you can't play, then you've got to change your entire tactics and approach. Or Messi, if he were playing and suddenly it became dangerous, if it were raining and the soft cloth melted off, or not melted off, but got soft and then suddenly it was hard.
Is it acid rain?
Exactly. That's what happens. No, but you know what I mean? That if it was soft, but then it was wet, and then like the cushioning stuff wasn't as cushioning anymore, and suddenly it was a hard cast, he has to be subbed off or remove the cast. So I think it's a variable that you can't really plan for. So I think teams would rather just avoid the variable, let Messi get healthy, then he comes back.
Go heal your arm up.
Yeah.
Also, Malcolm's scoring now, so
exactly.
They don't even need Messi.
And also, don't play in acid rain.
Up next is our final question. It's from Joey Jadlowski. Joey wants to know, for the careers of US men's national team players, where is the cutoff for European leagues that are superior to Major League Soccer? So when I read this question, I immediately thought, I'm not going to be able to give an exact answer to this, but I really want to talk about it. Here's an example Joe gives. Obviously, a player playing regularly in La Liga, Bundesliga, Premier League is getting a much better competitive experience than in Major League Soccer. You'd have to be a real MLS diehard to argue otherwise, right? But playing in Gibraltar or San Marino is a less competitive experience.
Shots fired at Gibraltar and San Marino by Joey.
But what about, says Joey, in Scotland or Sweden or Israel or Norway or Poland? What is the cutoff?
Okay.
It's a tough one, right?
This is, again, maybe a cop-out answer, but I would say the cutoff for me is age. That really is what it is.
What?
It's not about necessarily the level. Like, certainly, yes, Joey's correct. San Marino, not that great of a league.
I
if
actually
you're
don't even
trying
know
to
if San
develop.
Marino have a league. I don't know if probably San Marinese teams end up just playing in the lower reaches of Italian football. But
I couldn't say for sure.
Okay.
But what I would say is that, I guess for me, no, I don't think the Scottish league from top to bottom is as good as Major League Soccer. I really don't. I think that you would get some MLS teams that would beat some Scottish teams pretty handily. I think Celtic probably gives everybody some issues. All that is to say, though, that if you have a 16-year-old American who has, dual citizenship and is starting and playing for an SPL team, that's a different factor for me. If you have a 30-year-old player playing for a lower-tier Scottish team, then it's a little different. And so I think that's where age is an issue for me, is that if you've got a player at their peak, at their prime age, playing in a lower tier, not that top tier Premier League, Bundesliga, it's different to me than a 16-year-old, 17-year-old. So, for example,
doesn't age not matter? If a 16-year-old was playing in Major League Soccer, surely if we say that playing for an MLS team is better than playing for one of the teams at the bottom end of the SPL, isn't it still just better to be playing in Major League Soccer than to be playing for picking a team at random and trying not to insult anyone like Dunfermline?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess you're probably right, because then you're at least getting a bit more consistency in who you're playing. So maybe that's the answer then. It's probably that level around Scotland where I get maybe less excited to see a player go there.
In fact, actually, what you set up in my head...
I think that... Sorry. Go ahead. Then you...
I was going to say that your Scotland example, I think, is really good, because I think... even though I'm interested in Joey's question, I think in a weird way it's the club that's more important, right? Because playing for Celtic or Rangers or Hibs or Hearts or Aberdeen is, probably a pretty good level versus playing for a very small SPL team is maybe not such a good level, right? But then this makes it more complicated. You have the chance of being spotted by Celtic or Rangers, and then you have the chance of being spotted by an English Premier League team. And there's quite maybe a springboard aspect to this as much as anything else.
That's, I guess, what I was trying to say with the age thing, and I just said it very ineloquently, is if you have a 16-year-old who's gets signed by Malmo, like Roman Gall, a good example, not 16,
23.
But still, if you have a younger player who gets signed by Malmo, I would look at that and think like, oh, that's exciting because that feels like a springboard. Yeah. But if you have a 30-year-old player moving to Malmo, I don't know if I'm as excited as I guess what I'm getting at.
Can we do this though? So I take your point, but let's remove age from it and just literally think of it as, it doesn't even have to be a US player that you invested in their career, just what's the better competitive experience. So if we say, we'll go back to Joe's question, Premier League, Bundesliga, better competitive experience than Major League Soccer. Low level league, let's say San Marino, Gibraltar, obviously not. But in the middle, we're essentially asking is playing in Sweden as competitive as playing in Major League Soccer? Is playing in Poland as competitive as Major League Soccer? And I think the answer is we don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
I would agree with that. Yeah, I don't know because I can't say I have the familiarity with Poland from top to bottom.
Yeah.
To say like, yep, those teams are beating every time. I know there are people out there who would say like, how can you even say that? Of course, Polish teams would. They play in the Champions League and they're all very strong.
Not that regularly.
Exactly. That's the thing. So I don't really know. It's difficult to say. It makes it a very challenging question when you remove some of the safety protocols that I prefer to implement.
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove
by safety protocols. I mean the things that allow me to answer this easily.
I'm going to remove the safety protocols and just go all in and make some bold, confident statements that might be very hard to back up.
Can I list countries and you tell me better or worse?
I've more got things coming to mind. All right, so I'm going to say playing in Belgium. Definitely more competitive than Major League Soccer. Mm-hmm. I am going to say Sweden, Denmark, Norway. Actually, I'm going to say Denmark may be on the same level based on what I've seen watching some Jonathan Ayman games. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say Sweden slightly above. Norway, I don't know.
Wait, Sweden is slightly above Denmark or Sweden is slightly above MLS?
Yes, both. Denmark may be level with MLS. Okay, yeah?
All right.
Switzerland, I'm going to say better than MLS. Based on not much, except maybe seeing FC Basel in the Champions League now and again. Russian Premier League, better than MLS. A lot of very highly paid players in the Russian Premier League, a lot of Russian internationals.
Yeah.
Ukrainian Premier League, especially if you're at one of the bigger teams, better than MLS.
Yeah.
I'm going to make some people angry here as we get closer and closer and closer. I've already said Switzerland, I've already said Belgium. Man, Poland, I just don't know. I've never watched a full match in the Elektrostrasse.
Yeah.
Or pronounced the name of the league correctly.
There we go. I would say Greece and Turkey are probably up there as well.
Definitely more competitive than MLS. Yeah, it's a pretty high level in Greece and Turkey.
Yeah.
Austrian Bundesliga is an interesting one to me. And I think maybe the connection to the German Bundesliga and the proximity to it and the crossover between it, I'm going to say probably slightly better than MLS, but not by much.
Yeah. I mean, it's still...
this is me with safety protocols off, and someone could absolutely prove me wrong, but I'm just going to say stuff out loud to get you and me thinking.
It's really hard. I'm glad you can do that. I find it very difficult to remove a lot of the protocols. It's really difficult to not see that because I keep going back to like, well, if it's a 17-year-old and he's playing in Austria, maybe that gets him a look at the Bundesliga, then I'm okay with it. Maybe that Bundesliga team is more inclined to look at an Austrian league than an MLS team or something like that.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's what it comes down to is it doesn't like for like us, if we're just looking at Americans, then it's one scale. But if we're looking at the end goal, it's a different scale in my mind because I do think a lot of leagues that maybe aren't as good in terms of developing players or giving young Americans minutes, or it would look as impressive if a young American were playing there. It still might make them more likely to be seen by a European team and then maybe or another European team, and then they move up that ladder.
Yes.
So that's the other aspect of it that makes it confusing is the approach from those bigger tier European teams and leagues to European leagues versus MLS.
That's not necessarily to Joey's question, because he's asking about competitive experience, but in terms of where I would prefer a US national team player to be, there's a lot of European leagues where, it's a springboard to a bigger league where maybe it's worth being over there. Now I've got a couple more bold statements for you. Hang on, let me do this before it goes out of my head. Iceland, worse than MLS.
Yep.
Finland, worse than MLS.
Those are not bold. Those are not bold statements.
I still said that anyway.
I feel like you've kind of... Oh, no, you said Switzerland.
The Isle of Jersey and Guernsey, worse than MLS.
My handwriting is bad. This is why I got confused for a moment there. I feel like you have conveniently sidestepped Scotland. Have you officially answered Scotland?
I haven't, but...
Is Scotland better or worse than Denmark is the question.
I think better because of the presence of those two big teams and another 2 or 3 pretty big teams underneath.
I would love to know which 2 teams you're referring to as big teams in Scotland.
I mean, it's still
the one that was relegated and is not very good still?
Made their way back, yeah.
Yeah. I know what you mean there, but that is also, it is a prestige thing. It's why AC Milan would be in the Super League for whatever reason. There we go. I think I would put Scotland under Denmark, and with that in mind, I would then say that, yeah, MLS is probably a better league for a young player to be playing in than Scotland. See, I'm still making a young player, though. Here we are.
The other part, if we're really going to talk about just young players' careers rather than competitive experience, the other part to me is if you do what's his name? Christian Kappis just did, where they wouldn't let him sign a homegrown deal with certain teams because there's a disagreement between, I believe, Dallas and Houston. And he went and signed for Hobro, where Emmanuel Sabi is. I think a lot of players are better off in Europe just because they have escaped the entanglements of Major League Soccer contracts, right? And how hard it is to leave MLS because the league has to sign off on the move and all that sort of stuff. So for a player's career, maybe a league that's level pegging, like like Sweden or Denmark might be, or maybe even just below, maybe you're better off there because you have the springboard and you have the lack of contractual entanglements.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you on that one. Here's another one.
Full of bold statements.
Here's a big one that we haven't talked about yet, surprisingly. The championship. Because I feel like the championship is better. Like from top to bottom, I feel like I don't know if there's more money, but I think
I do too. I think there's more money and better teams.
So then League One?
I don't know. I haven't, since Wolves were in it, I haven't watched it. So
I see. I would say League One, not as good as MLS.
Yes, okay. I think my general perception of Major League Soccer teams, if you take off the very, very best team each season, lower end of the championship, upper end of League One. Yeah. I'm definitely going to hear about this, but that's, again, all safeguards have been removed for today's show.
But it's a weird thing.
This could be the last ever Total Soccer show.
I think I appreciate your perspective and the way you've approached it, because I think doing just the kind of general, if I offend people, is the way to do it. Because as soon as you make it specific. So, for example, I said I think I would rather see a player playing in MLS and doing really well than a player playing in Scotland. That said, I wouldn't want to see Emerson Hyman's next loan move be back to an MLS side, whereas I would be okay with it being to an SPL side again. Okay, so it's a strange, once you make it specific, it changes a little bit.
That's interesting, yeah.
So maybe that's what we need as a follow-up from Joey, is just give us a list of players and where we would want to see them. What's the the tier of where we want to see them or something like that.
Well, thank you to Joey for that question, where my answers made Taylor sweat a little bit, I think, which is part of my enjoyment.
It's more about, again, this is what I like about the listener question shows, is that my brain answers things in a very my brain sort of way. And when forced to remove some of the things that I usually just the immediate approach I have to that question is it's this, so that means this, and if I remove the first this, then it changes my answer completely. So that's what I enjoy about it. It's an abstract way of doing a show, and I dig it.
And if you would like to ask us a question, you can do so at totalsoccershow.com/questions. totalsoccershow.com/questions. It's worth noting we do get a lot of questions come our way. So if you don't get it answered, please don't be offended. Just be aware that there's a lot coming in. I mean, I love it. It's great, right? It's one of my dreams was to have a show where people sent us loads of questions and we could choose from them.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll get to what dog should play for the U.S. national team next week.
Did we already do that?
I think we probably did.
We had what?
I think what should be the mascot, maybe? I forget.
We did do that. We did do exactly that. So once again, totalsoccershow.com/questions. Thank you to our sponsors, Grip6 and RX Bar. Links to both will be in the show notes. Thank you to all the Redditors at reddit.com/r/totalsoccershow. I'm going to put the link to that one more time in the show notes. It seems like there's some good actual conversation happening on that page right now.
Yeah, we had a tweet. This is dangerous what I'm doing right now. We had a tweet.
Oh, I know. I did it as well.
What?
I Googled it after we saw it.
Do you know what it is?
Yes.
Because they said it's very important that you not go to r/TSS, that you go to r/Total Soccer Show. Can you say, is it, would we have to censor? Would we have to add an explicit tag?
No, I just saw the first search result is something that I'd be uncomfortable saying.
All right.
I think one of the TSS things was toxic shock syndrome as well.
Yikes.
Yeah.
All
Which is not a thing we thought about with the acronym for the show.
Not so much. Not so much. So it's TFSS. That's all I'm saying.
But thank you to everybody who's set up that subreddit. And if you'd like to go and get involved, please go and join them.
Please do.
All right, Taylor, what's on tap for the rest of the week here on the Total Soccer Show?
First of all, I would like somebody to change Totally Soccer Show to redirect to Total Soccer Show. If you could do that, I'd appreciate it. What else we've got coming up is MLS playoffs.
Yes.
We've got Seattle v. Portland, home team first, on Thursday evening. So we'll be back to review that one on Friday.
Yes.
We're also going to be, probably doing some more questions, looking at whatever news pops up.
Yes.
We're going to do maybe a double weekend review is what we're leaning towards right now.
So what's happened is with the first leg of the MLS Conference semi-finals, we had intended to review them, but then Football Leaks came out and we got very distracted. And I feel like the window of us reviewing those first legs has passed. But what we will do is definitely watch and review all the second legs, right? Over Thursday with the Seattle-Portland, but then over the weekend with the other 3 games. But there's also Copa Libertadores, first leg, the Super Classico.
Oh boy.
It's on Fox Soccer Match Pass.
It's not even the Honda Super Classico.
It's not. It's not quite as good.
No.
And it's the Manchester Derby. It's the Manchester Derby as well this weekend.
Daryl said a lot of things on this show that, if taken out of context, could get him into trouble, including saying that the Super Classico isn't as good as the Honda Super Classico.
I think people can hear my tongue firmly in my cheek.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Let's hope so indeed.
That would make podcasting difficult.
It would. We would lose listeners.
We would.
All right. Before we do lose listeners, let's say goodbye.
Let's do
Taylor
it.
Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. And we will be back on Friday after the Seattle-Portland second leg.